The next speaker who's sitting right by me is Dr. Denise Dostatny. She has received her PhD in biology in 2002, and for a while now she's been working at the National Center for Plant Genetic Resources in the Plant Breeding and Acclimatization Institute in Poland. She also is one of our main contacts for the National Seed Bank in Poland. And her specialization is agrobiodiversity, as well as inter and intra-species variability. And Dr. Denise Dostatny will speak today on the topic, is it possible to create a model refuge of agrobiodiversity?
I would like to speak a little bit about my researches about agrobiodiversity in Poland. So at the beginning, I would like to say a little bit about our country, about Poland. The rural area of Poland is very, very rich. We still have traditional cultivation here in Poland with a rich composition of other species. In Poland, we have a very big fragmentation of farms and relatively low consumption of industrial means of production. And more than half of the area of Poland is arable land, and almost 70% of it is cultivated. Poland, between other countries in Europe, has on the largest reserves of environmental diversity of agricultural landscape of all countries in Europe, as I said before. Over half of all biodiversity in Europe is also associated with agriculture habitats. Agricultural diversity in the fields continue to decrease and ultimately will result in an increase of monoculture and decreased diversity of both flora and fauna in rural areas. And agricultural ecosystem have poorer species compositions, and if you have a very simple ecosystem, we have imbalance in there. New variety of cereal crops dominate in agrocenosis here in Poland, and I think in all Europe. There is no crop diversification, which causes a decrease in specialized pollinators. I would like to show you some slides, some research connected to ecosystem service. I know that somebody will be talk about that, but I would like just to show some things about the ecosystem service. Then can be described as the benefits obtained by the human population from an ecosystem. Higher biodiversity in agricultural systems increase the number and level of service in this ecosystem. Here you can see a photo from a picture from the field, from a field in the south of Poland, in which we have a very big diversity. This is now a little bit, not common, but not rare species, Papaver royas. It's very colorful. It is very difficult to find some fields like that. And of course, the farmer here is ecological farmer, organic farmer. The increase in weed biodiversity, can increase the quality of their service. For example, reduce the competition with crops. And that is true. It's very difficult to understand to farmers that the occurrence of weed species helps to increase the yield of crop. But we have a lot of research in that way, and we can show that this is true. Ecosystem services have received increasing attention in life science, but only a limited amount of quantitative data is available about the ability of weeds to provide this service. And here we have a graph. It was a result of our research. We read more than 100 different papers, different articles, which contain evidence of weeds providing ecosystem service for each type of ecosystem service. And we found more articles in PEST with pest control. The most common service regarding pest control, in which weeds, of course, provide habitat for natural enemies. This is quite a new search now, ecosystem service, but I think it's very, very important because we really prove that weed can attract beneficial organisms to cultivated fields. Here you can see in this graph different manner of service was provided by weeds. The first one is connected to beneficial organisms to cultivate fields. The second one, weeds had a direct effect on pests. The third show us the third show us the presence of weed reduce the appearance of crop to pest. Here we have the research concentration hypothesis. That means that weeds attract pests away from crops. Here, and some articles no head explanation was provided in manner which weeds provide pest control. But when we were reading this paper, we know now that we need more and more research in this way, in the way of ecosystem service. And this is also a graph connected with connected to this research. Here we have three levels of weed diversity in the response, and here we can see the magnitude of ecosystem service. When we have more weed diversity, we have more ecosystem service. The magnitude of increase of ecosystem process is reduced and in diverse weed communities. Here you can see that, of course, in one moment we have the no increasing more, but at the beginning, when we have some weed species and more weed species, we have more magnitude with increasing ecosystem service. Here is the same. It's just we can see that the red functions here shows the increase in magnitude of the service when weed diversity is randomly increased. The brown function shows the increase when management is aimed at conserving those weed species that are more effective for the desired service, while at the same time being little competitive with the crop. We have a lot of different ecosystem service. Insect pollination around the world are falling at alarming rate. Bee diversity seems to be diminishing as a result of intensive agriculture and increasing use of pesticides, but also because crops are harvested earlier. This is a big problem now, not only in Poland. And for this reason, we need to establish flower strips or keeping field weeds in both, because this can help preserve the diversity of bee species. Various groups of living organisms, including birds, including insects, have been selected as one of the measures for assessing the quality of life of societies in the European Union, but mainly birds. Here we have a graph in which we can see the wild bird indicator, and we have when we have more birds, you can see through the last 20 years, we can see that we have less birds in the rural areas, both in forest areas and in field areas also. And the last one is 2005, and now is worse, unfortunately. This graph also shows us the agri-environmental measures that they are effectiveness dependent not only on the landscape, but also depending the extent of habitat quality improvement. When we have more flowers, the bee is more richness. When we choose some species to sow in our fields, we need to take in account that the species is better if the species are native species or ARCHAEOPHYTES, because when we have exotic plants or invasive plants, the number of insects and other microorganisms can decrease. We need to know very good the area and the species which occur in our landscape. That is very important. Here in Poland, we have a lot of, not a lot of, but we have some invasive weeds, and we need to take care about that. And in seed material, we need to use more native and ARCHAEOPHYTE species. ARCHAEOPHYTEs are the species which come to our country 2,000 years ago. Here is difficult to, I will try to explain this graph because it's about my research, which I conducted 10, 15 years ago. In these points, we can see one phytosociological releve. Phytosociological releve is when we go to the fields and we note all the species which occur in 100 square meters, and that and their cover, the percentage of their cover. And we can see here that when we have more species, here we have the number of weed species which occur in one field. When we have more species, their cover are not very high. But when we have a small number of species, here you can see 15 species, their cover are very high. We might assume that in places where herbicides were not used, here, in that case, of that field, the number of weed species is considerably higher than on the fields where herbicides were applied. However, individual species occur in a few species only, in a few individuals only, which cause a general level of weed coverage of these fields is low. This is very important because in this way you can show that the application of herbicides is very dangerous. If farmers apply a lot of herbicides in no control, can control of them, some invasive species can occur. It can dominate in the fields. But if we have just rare species, they concur one with another, and we can get a good yield of our cultivation. And here we have one example of that. This is in the south of Poland. We can say here, we can see here some weed species, but not affect a lot the yield here. But we have a very what we can do. We need to building agriculture education activities a lot. We need to talk with farmers, we need to talk to authorities, we need to talk about these things. The picture which I showed in the previous slides showed the Niecka Nidziańska, and then in that place we built a model, a refuge of agrobiodiversity. And in the last 15-20 years appear about 5-6 different weed species which didn't occur in the last 20 years thanks to these activities, and the farmers support the biodiversity and in that place. Several training sessions were prepared with the farmers, festivity, collaboration. We had some collaboration with local authorities, farmers, and so on. And local people were trained to continue this action that had been initiated under the project by participation in the Polish agro-environmental programs in the package 6. This package involves the cultivation and production of seed materials of regional and amateur varieties. Here I wrote something, what's the meaning of the regional variety and the amateur varieties, but I don't talk about this. That is just because I want to show you that we have some tools to preserve this diversity in rural areas, and you need to use that. You need to try use that And if farmers have their seeds, traditional seeds, vegetable, for example, they can register as a amateur variety, because the registration, no registration fee, of course, a lot of documentation to prepare, but it is worth a try. And I think we need to use this tool and try to preserve some material which we have still have in rural farmers have. Unfortunately, this variant 6.3 was shortened in the new edition of this program. I think that the agro-environmental program now is the 3rd edition, and unfortunately was shortened, has been removed altogether, which constitutes, I think, a great step backwards. And now we just can, the farmers just can reproduce material of old varieties of cultivated plant, which are in the list of the ministry. We are talking about the next edition of the agro-environmental program, which started next year, but I think will be very, very difficult to continue that. Here we can see some places in which we collect plant genetical material, because as I said here, Joanna said, I work in Polish gene bank, and we collect material throughout Poland and also in the neighboring countries. We take this material and all documentation connected to the material which are collected. So we have this material in our gene bank, and we can provide this material to farmers. We have all of information in our websites. Of course, we can't provide a big amount of this material, just something like 10, 20 or 100 seeds for each person, each farmer, but we can provide this material and try to reintroduce in the field again. And how we can create this kind of model. We can create home gardens, of course. Here we have very nice picture from different home gardens. I don't know if you go to your countries, but here in Poland, in rural areas, we don't have a lot of home gardens in rural areas. People work in another places and don't have time to keep that material, and it's better to buy, it's easier to buy in the big supermarkets than create them home gardens. But this is very, very important because the diversity of household needs is reflected in home gardens. It can include foods, fruits, vegetables, materials, medicines, everything, as Marta said at the beginning, and really can supply nutritional foods and some staples foods all year round, including vegetable, aromatic, and medicinal plants, and in some case, it can generate income from the sale of garden produce. We, of course, I think is also important. A garden offers shade and flowers for a family and their visitors to enjoy it. Get the balance right in your garden will flourish, creating a food chain that manage the ecosystem of your garden. And remember that the wildlife garden needs habitats to breed, shelter, and sustenance to forage throughout the year. This picture is very rarely, but it's very, very nice. We can, as I said, we can build home gardens with wild and traditional cultivated plant. For that, we need to note everything which we have with typical, with traditional of our region, keep the seeds and cultivate them in small places. We also can cultivate wild crop relative, which are very, very important group of plants. White plants have significant value for food security and human, but also are threatened. We need to increase national attention to plant conservation of white relatives, and if you can cultivate them in our home garden, the farmers can cultivate is also very important for that. And another kind of refuge is we can build in small farms, also with traditional cultivated plants and with wild plants. If the farmers doesn't have material, can take this material from our gene bank, and then besides of cultivation, we can use the traditional technology and produce local product, as we see here with false flax. This is one example. And here we have a very, very nice landscapes, typical in Poland, as I said at the beginning. A big small farming in which we can have different cultivations. And we can reintroduce really traditional plants. At the end, I would like to say that the biodiversity certainly doesn't not need people, but people need biodiversity, and we know about that. In my home country, for example, last year in Brazil, we lost a lot of species in Amazonia, but hurts me the most that we are losing wild species that we do not have even know here in Poland. For this reason, the education is crucial, as it is a process in which society consciously transfer its accumulated knowledge, skills, and values from generation to generation. We need to work together. We need to reintroduce these traditional varieties. We need to keep these seeds in small banks in which region of Poland, not just in gene bank. We need to preserve our traditional varieties, but we need to find a link between all society groups, and I think this is the problem. But we need to do this, and we need to, in that way, increase the genetic diversity by different actions. Thank you, and let's do it together.